what we identify here is a continuing commitment to industrial action when it's necessary. Only 40% agree that non-striking workers should be allowed to work. And this is a fundamental point, because your strategic power is keeping workers together. An injury to one is an injury to all. That's your power. So scabbing is a problem. And of course, that's where a lot of the violence comes in. 56% feel strike yields out, but it's a moot point if you did a statistical analysis of the benefits and costs of a strike. But it's certainly a sense this is our power. And 83% feel non-striking workers should be engaged with. Now, of course, as you'll see in the more detailed slide that Mohammed will be presenting, there are variations of what engaged could mean. The idea, and it's a very important idea, at the heart of the right to strike is that it's a non-violent, peaceful weapon. And that's why the right to picket is at the center. But the right to picket is a moral appeal to your fellow workers to stand together. Placards. But of course, and this is fundamentally important, where the union is weak, it's difficult for it to discipline its members. And so that's when you get violence. The most terrifying one was the public security strike here in Johannesburg 6 years ago. 30, 40, 50 people killed, striking workers. That's very important. It's because there wasn't a strong union to discipline its members. Weak unions, divided unions, leads to violence. Marikana. NUM lost its support. AMCU wasn't really there. Workers out of control. That's something that I would want to really stress as an important, this idea of shop steward as caught between the demands, maybe unreasonable, maybe reasonable, of its members and management, maybe reasonable, maybe unreasonable. A piece of elastic caught in between. Not an agitator, maybe performing a management function, unpaid, of course. Although one of the changes that's taken place and is the full-time shop stewards. And in our sample, I noticed 24% of the NUM shop stewards were full-time. So they are on the company's payroll and get drawn into management. So that's a third theme. And of course, now for the sexy part, the political party electoral support. One of the constant themes of research over this 23-year period is the support for the ANC. The question is, who would you vote for? Okay, it's very important because there is a nuance that we're going to introduce here. And what is particularly interesting is the continuity theme. In 1992, of course, we didn't have data on membership at that time, but in terms of allegiance, we asked the question, who would you support in the elections? And 96% for the ANC. It's statistically insignificant, the overwhelming support for the ANC in the coming elections. That's the question. That's the question. SACP, well, SACP doesn't stand, well, I'm going to come on to that, but it doesn't stand as a separate party, so it didn't have much support then and didn't have much as an electoral candidate then. In this thing, DA, largely the Western Cape, PAC, and COPE, of course, the wild card, which emerged in 2008 and participated in the 2009 election. But I think the key point really is that there is this enduring political commitment to the party that won us liberation. And of course, Cosatu members are major beneficiaries of the new South Africa. Though, and don't forget, in that core that I mentioned, 93% of the core are in standard employment relationships. In that 93% of Cosatu members are in the core, decent jobs. I think what we did was introduce a hypothetical, very important. This is a hypothetical question. If Cosatu were to form a Labour Party and contest national elections, would you vote for such a party? Now, I'm just wanting to underline the fact that this is a hypothetical question, but it was put to the respondents, and 65% said yes. I mean, 28% no, it's quite a significant. 7% I don't know. Now, I think you have to think quite carefully about this, because the previous question was, would you vote for the South African Communist Party if it stood alone? Because at the moment it doesn't. And in that question, 45% said yes. So there's a very interesting scenario, and I think the interpretation we are giving is that there's clear support for a party to the left of the ANC. That's whether it's a classic Marxist-Leninist communist party, or whether it's a more left social democratic Labour Party, is the interesting question, what form this alternative will take. That's the battle for ideas. That's, if you can get away from the personalities for a moment, that's happening behind the scenes. And again, if you look, what makes this significant, the 65%, is in 1992, we didn't have a question like this. We did ask them, very important at the time, just before Cadessa, who represent your interests best? Cosatu. In the negotiations, in the transition, Cadessa. And it was quite clear that Cosatu. So I think what we can draw from this is that we support the ANC, that's the party of liberation, but, and you'll see in the slides, ongoing discontent around delivery and so on and so forth, suggests that an alternative is emerging and a possibility. And I think pre-2008, it was quite a small, if you go back longitude, quite a small proportion would have taken this position.